Can President Trump delete an entire agency? He seems to think so. There's some Republican lawmakers that agree. And there's so much energy in Congress right now to completely dismantle and get rid of the Department of Education, proposing a bill that would completely change the way education is handled in our country. But what are the real implications? In this video, we're going to explore what's going into this and how is it going to impact students, educators, and the American public. Let's get into it. The bill in question is H.R. 899, and it's really straightforward with just one sentence. The Department of Education shall terminate on December 31st, 2026. But behind this simple statement is a complicated ideological debate. Proponents like Representative Massey and Senator Rounds argue for local control. They believe that decisions regarding education, it should all be coming from the local level, from the town, the county, the city, that level. They do not believe it belongs in the hands of people at Washington, D.C. at the top level. Massey has said states and local communities are best positioned to shape curricula that meets the needs of their students. Rounds has said local school boards and state Department of Education know best what their students need. So the Department of Education was signed into law in 1979 by Jimmy Carter. It went into operation in 1980, so it's been around for about 45 years. They currently have about 3,800 employees, and interestingly, 62% are female compared with 37% being male. In 2024, the Education Department received federal funding that totaled around $240 billion. In fiscal year 25, that amount is currently at $100 billion. You can see here that over the past 5 years, it has been declining. That's a lot of money. So what are the main functions of this agency? Well, number one is federal student aid management. This includes Pell Grants, federal student loans, FAFSA application processing, all of those type activities. And then enforcement of civil rights in education. This is to make sure people aren't being discriminated against based on their gender, based on their race, based on their disability or their age. And you would wonder, like, okay, how many complaints are actually coming in? Well, if you look at 2023, they had over 19,000 complaints. Another function is special education and rehabilitation. This includes funding, policy guidance, and oversight over disabled kids. There's programs at the local level to help kids that are suffering, not from a physical disability all the time, but also it could be a mental disability. My son goes to school not too far from here. There's a kid in his class. That kid requires an assistant, a helper, to be with him at all times so that when he gets confused or he gets angry or agitated or doesn't understand, that individual can help provide assistance so that he could still have a learning experience in the classroom. Now, to understand a little history behind the Education Department, President Reagan ran on the campaign promise that he was going to abolish it, that he was going to get rid of it completely. And that was his intent until Congress stopped him. Now, this isn't necessarily about just getting rid of the Education Department. This is really changing the philosophy of the country as it regards to education. And there's been some scandals over the years. There's been the for-profit colleges that are misrepresenting data to receive federal funding. Then you had the fraud and misuse of $44 million. With that one, a few guys, they got together and decided to run an online school. And when they reported the students, the number of students that they had, they always inflated the number. And they would even include students that were done with the program just to receive more federal funds. Now, an employee at the school, they were trying to blow the whistle. They were trying to inform the government of what was happening, and that employee got fired. And they kept the scheme going for a few more months. Now, this is an issue, in this case it was Indiana, but the question is raised, how well is the oversight of a federal program like this? This is what we know that has been abused, that has been exploited. But how many other cases do we not hear of? The Trump administration has already begun what some might call a soft dismantling of the department. Recently, staff were sidelined because they were involved in DEI training. This is not just with this agency, this is with all agencies. And this move, it mirrors certain tactics that have been used at the USAID. But you need Congress to officially eliminate the Department of Education. There's a way where you can introduce a bill and you can pass it through the House. But once you get to the Senate, there's the filibuster. So you're going to need 60. You're going to need 60 senators to agree to get rid of the Education Department. The Republicans only have 53. So provided that all Republicans vote to get rid of the Education Department, you would still need 7 Democrats to come over. Now, this could be avoided by using budget reconciliation, but that would come with its own separate set of challenges. And a lot of people, they don't think that you can use budget allocation to get rid of an entire department like the Education Department. If the Department of Education were to be eliminated, what would happen then? You have $1 trillion in student debt that they possess. So that debt would probably go to the Department of Treasury. But this transfer is likely to come with a whole bunch of complications. And then what would happen to the Pell Grant? What would happen to federal loans that are provided to students? Would the Department of Treasury facilitate that? Would that be delegated down to the state level? Would they still qualify? Would money still even be available at the federal level for those programs? Or would states have to look in their own budget to see what can we provide from a state level? If that's the case, you have some states that are quite wealthy, and then you have other states not so much. So is it going to come down to the states where maybe if you live in Rhode Island, your chances of a scholarship are little to none. But if you live, in Texas or maybe even California, maybe you get a full ride. Best case scenario, the Republicans do not try to abolish the department. It doesn't go away. A lot of people think that it's likely it will survive. But what the Republicans can do, and what the president can help do, is starve it of its resources. So the president can use executive orders. They can use it for reorganization. He can reduce the scope of the department's activities, and he's already placed quite a few people at the Education Department. He's put them on paid administrative leave and hinted at broader staffing cuts. The future of federal government jobs, it looks uncertain, and a lot of people, they're not even going to apply because they're worried. They want to see how everything shakes out. Even though right now there's over 5,000 open government jobs that are not impacted by the hiring freeze. These are jobs in the Department of Defense, in the Department of Homeland Security, in the VA, and many other agencies that you can look for right now. Maybe there's some near you and you can apply. But before you do that, you should have an understanding of the hiring process and what goes into it from when you create your account, when you submit your resume, go on the interview, and finally get the job offer. So if you're interested in learning more about that process, I want you to watch this video next. If you need a federal resume example, check out the links down below. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.